All right, back at it again. This will be my third discussion. Um, Talking with Nick Sadler of Daughters. Wait until he jumps on right here. Just waiting on Nick. Let's see if he's on yet. Here we go.
Hey,
Hey, what's
what's
going
up,
on,
man?
Nick? What's going on?
Hold on, let me turn this up so I can hear you properly.
All right.
There we go. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. Let me turn it back down. What's going on, dude?
Not much. Not much. I want to thank you for doing this. I know it's Labor Day weekend, and I didn't know if you had plans or whatever, but
It's a very important holiday to me. I'm a big fan of labor. Uh, no, I don't know. These types of holidays, I'm sure they're important to somebody, and I would never try to diminish that, but they're usually pretty lost on me. So every year when they come around all my life, I'm like, oh, great. Everything's closed on Monday.
yeah,
Like I have shit I have to do here, you know.
yeah, exactly. Did you have any plans for tomorrow, or just being with
Not
family?
really. Not really. I think maybe last night someone in a text thread suggested we get together, but nothing concrete.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's kind of this whole year. It's strange.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
really been by myself more or less since pretty much since like December, actually. It kind
yeah,
of started out that way intentionally and then became
and then became a real thing. Like,
a thing. Yeah.
yeah, which is crazy. I know, I know. The last time I saw you was at the Jerome's Dream show in Somerville,
Yeah.
uh, which was great. And then all of a sudden, Jerome's Dream played with you guys in Europe and stuff, which I thought
Yeah.
was amazing.
That's why I went to that show. Well, I mean, I went to the show because as a kid, I loved Jerome's Dream. So it was like an opportunity to see this band again. But I also was literally like thinking, well, maybe there's an opportunity if this band sounds cool or whatever, if they still sound good
Yeah,
for the two bands to hook up. And weirdly, it actually came true. Like when I go see bands and stuff, sometimes that's what I'm thinking. Like, I wonder if we can make like a tour or some shows happen or something. And it doesn't always work out, but I have a big poster on my wall right over here of Daughters and Jerome's Dream in Denmark. That's like the
really,
cool.
yeah,
That's like the coolest thing ever to me.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was pumped to see them after so many years because I hadn't seen them since Jesus, I don't know. It was I saw them play with Reversal Man and a Suck in Rochester, New Hampshire. Like I don't even know how many years ago. It was like
Yeah,
ridiculous amount of years ago. So
yeah.
when I had the opportunity to go, and then I saw you, and so and then we
Yeah. I just gave my buddy Bob my last remaining Reversal of Man piece of music, which was I think was it called Endless Summer?
oh yeah, yes,
It was
yep,
like this kind of like maroon colored CD thing with a book. They
yep,
had a lot of illustrations then, and
yep.
honestly, I don't own any records at all at this point, and I was just kind of holding on to stuff like that for nostalgic value. And my buddy Bob truly collects and loves this stuff, so I just gave it to him. But
That's
all,
definitely a gem.
yeah, and people don't realize at this point that like later on when as Daughters was going along, people assumed we sprung out we sprung from influences like Arabon Radar, or like the Locust or something, but they don't understand that Daughters is actually sort of like a late stage screamo band at the beginning,
Yes.
especially if you listen to like the first 7-inch back to back with like a Jerome's Dream release, you'll see that like
Yeah, yeah,
unintentionally, completely unintentionally, but that band, that was like, that was the culture we were in.
yeah. I agree. I mean, when in like 2002, that's when you first joined, right? Well, that's when Daughters kind of came together in 2002.
Yeah, so the story goes is that I was playing in a hardcore band that I quit and the rest of the members kept going. And when I quit, John and Lex heard about it. We had already played in other bands before and asked me to try out for As the Sun Sets. They were like losing guitar players or something. And so I did some rehearsals for like a week or two, something like that. And then I get a call from John or Lex, I don't remember which, saying that they're just breaking As the Sun Sets up and they've got some other people and they want to start a new band called Daughters. And I was going to be in it. The other guitar player, Jeremy, who left like pretty early on, like 2004 maybe,
Yeah,
he came up with the name. I'm not sure what it was all about, but basically we went to a meeting. We had a band name, we had all the members, and we had no songs at all. But we had like a tour booked because we were taking over an As the Sun Sets tour.
yeah,
So we had to very quickly write. I think we had 7 minutes worth of music, and we did like a month in the United States on 7 minutes, 2 full stacks.
yeah, yeah.
We would set up in some kid's basement, play for literally 7 minutes, break it down, and leave. Looking back at that, it's crazy because we play for 60, 70 minutes now.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I know from the what was the Canada songs is how many minutes long? It's only
it's like 11.
11 minutes, and then the new album is like 50 something minutes.
Yeah.
It's a big, although
Yeah.
I mean there's been many years where you guys evolved into like what
Totally.
you are now.
Yeah, I don't know. The last record, in a way, it's not like I sat down and went, I want a long ass record this time. It was only that I like repetition, and I like breathing space, and I love minimalism to a degree. Even though Daughters doesn't really represent minimalism, it was like an effort to get to that.
Yeah.
And as a result, like some of these parts go on and on and on at the ends of songs, and they were there. It was intended to like make a point in terms of mood and tone. So like, Satan in the Wait and Ocean Song go on at the end. They kind of repeat on these loops. And that was because those two pieces of music felt like kind of miserable to me.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be kind of cool to just drive that point home. And originally I wanted Satan in the Wait to be the last song on the record. So that way you're left with this like dismal vibe, when the record was done.
Yeah, exactly.
But then in the end, actually, it was kind of an issue because it was like we're trying to pick out the artwork and stuff, and we realized now we have to do 2 pieces of vinyl because it's just too fucking long.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas our other stuff's too short, and it's like you got to do like a one-sided 7-inch or something. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. The crazy thing, like I put on my Instagram was when you were the drummer at Matadeo.
Yeah.
And then you hit me up and was like, hey, I'm the drummer of that band, and that blew my mind because, like I said, I saw you guys play twice, and I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. And then when you said it, and then I watched it, I was like, oh my god! I was like, I don't know how I missed that. Like,
well, I mean, obviously, I was like 18 then, and I'm going to be 38 next month, so there's 20 years difference. So there's that. But actually, Matadeo and Daughters existed at the same time. We played a show early on in Daughters where I played 2 sets that night. I drummed in Matadeo, and then later in the night I played in Daughters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Matadeo. For a really, really long time, Matadeo, in my mind, was my favorite band that I had been in. And but I've been in like a bazillion bands, all different types, playing different things. Just before this, I was looking at a video I found on YouTube of myself playing bass synth in a synth pop band that I did for like a few years when I was in school. But yeah, I mean, I suppose now that Daughters is visible, I might end up popping up here and there if people happen to have cool videos like the one you had.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now,
which could be embarrassing. I don't really know.
Now, are you playing with any other bands besides Daughters as of right now? I mean, is Way Out still
Way Out is still a thing. Poor Way Out has had to wait it out while I was away with Daughters and stuff. And then I came home, we played a show, we started working on the next record. We got some songs in the tank, and then COVID hit. We had to cancel a show we had booked, and everyone in our group is very cautious about COVID related stuff, especially because our drummer Anna is a teacher.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have seen them, but we haven't really played. There's really no comfortable way. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's more wiggle room now. It's getting confusing in terms of
Yeah.
COVID, but we've been playing it safe essentially. Eventually we'll play again. I feel like Way Out's the kind of band where like maybe we'll never do a whole bunch of stuff, but I feel like in a way we'll always be a band,
Yeah. Yeah.
always making tunes, you know? And I love that band. Mata Dio was kind of my favorite band, and now Way Out is kind of taken that, you know, I don't mean to diminish Daughters in any way,
Yeah.
but Daughters has become like this, it's like, it is my life. So it's not quite as, it's special, but I don't know how to describe it. It's so present that I have to find other avenues
Yeah.
to, you know, to be like, well, Way Out is the best band that I'm in. It's the most fun band, you know,
Yeah.
whereas like Daughters becomes quite serious in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I don't know.
Now, have you always lived in like Rhode Island, or where are you originally from?
I'm from a town a few minutes outside of Providence called Central Falls. It's one of the lower income places in this state. And, but it's also like, at least in my timeline, my story is pretty fortunate because I could just hop on a bus and within 5 or 10 minutes, whatever, I would be in Providence. And my mother was very liberal and quite young and like a young rocker in her own right. And so she just let me hop on the bus and go to shows and stuff when I was like way too young. And I
Yeah.
literally went to like everything. I went to things that if I told you about now would be completely embarrassing because I was just trying to figure out what I liked, and
Yeah.
I was excited about live music.
Yeah.
But yeah, CF, man, that's what we call it.
Now, were you initially drawn to like a metal, or was it like a hardcore? Uh,
Uh, you know,
like
when I was like really young, like in middle school and stuff. So the thing is my dad was like a metalhead, and he just basically liked anything that felt sort of rebellious to him that he could catch on the radio or on TV. So he always loved things like Metallica and Guns N' Roses, and he liked The Clash. And then in the '90s, he gave me a Hum tape. That's how I learned who Hum was. He was like, "Check this out." He like gave me a Hum tape, and it turned out it was awesome. I loved it.
yeah. Yeah.
And but then in like middle school and stuff, I was just looking like probably a lot of people in my age group in the '90s for just darker, edgier, more exciting stuff. And so I gravitated towards 120 Minutes, like late at night, whatever was on there. You know, Marilyn Manson, Ministry, you name it. And but then I caught wind of like punk and hardcore and stuff like that, and went through a phase where like things like goth music and stuff were like so uncool. And if it wasn't like punk or hardcore or like metal, and in Providence, we've always had like a pretty prominent noise community. So if it
Yeah.
wasn't those things, I was kind of like about it. But it didn't take long for me to kind of go back on that. And in my late teens and stuff, my friends and I would be going to like goth night and stuff.
Yeah.
And so basically anything that just seemed like kind of edgy when I was young, pretty much, you know?
Yeah. What was like the one heaviest band that like really like made, you know what I mean? Because Daughters obviously is heavy, and
Yeah.
in the beginning.
I mean, when I was pretty young, probably the heaviest thing I heard early on was the first Korn record. You know, I remember hearing that and not even understanding what it was that I was hearing. It was just so ridiculous to me. And also as like a 14-year-old or however old I was, I didn't understand the content of the music as much. So it seemed really insane to me. I'm like, this guy's singing like nursery rhymes. Whoa, you know, like
Yeah.
this guy's twisted. And so that shit resonated. And then luckily in high school, there were these two kids. I think they were from Colombia, but there were these two Colombian like death metal dudes in my school, which was very strange, highly unusual, because
Yeah.
pretty much I was like the only rocker, and then randomly these dudes loved like extreme metal and death metal, and they gave me Once Upon the Cross by Deicide, and that kind of shifted my trajectory like dramatically.
Yeah.
And you know, eventually I started seeing more and more shows, and funny enough, I saw John and Lex's band, which was I think
Was
I
it
think
was it Cast Off Skin?
Yeah, it was Cast Off Skin. I saw Cast Off Skin, and they just had a vibe. You know, like Lex has always kind of had a vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that resonated with me, and that's when I started playing guitar. And so in a way, something John and Lex were doing also really kind of set me in motion as well.
Yes.
You know?
It's funny because that was the first time I ever like met Lex and John. Was I think I'm not sure if it was Ukla the Mock at the time, or
Yeah,
because I was really good friends with those guys, and
yeah.
I helped them out do some stuff that they were working on, but they were called Solomon Grundy before that, and I'm not sure if it was Solomon Grundy that played with Cast Off Skin in Providence, but I remember seeing Cast Off Skin, and that's when I met Lex and John, and I was like, whoa, this like
I
these
wonder
guys.
if that's the show where I saw them,
It,
because I saw Ukla the Mock with maybe Fault
yeah, Fault.
and As the Sun Sets at the Living Room when I was like really young. And I remember
Yeah.
this because Ukla the Mock had such a bizarre name to me. And the guy in Fault was doing backflips while he was singing. And Lex and John had dreadlocks still, which is like
Yes, I remember that.
actually worked at the time. You know what I mean? It didn't become something to maybe take a look at changing until a little later. At the
Yeah,
time, it made perfect sense.
yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I wonder if I was at that show, man. Ukla the Mock.
I think it sounds like that was the show that
Yeah.
that was the first time, which is crazy because then I know Lex always says that Ukla the Mock had kind of like an impact on his like not stage presence, but like he saw how wild those guys were, and then he like was
Yeah.
when As the Sunset started going, they kind of got like real wild too. You know what I mean?
You know, and you probably remember this whole thing, but there was a time where bands weren't that wild. I mean, there's always been some wild bands in their genres doing all kinds of stuff with their bodies, so like with their physical presence on the stage. But in like metal and hardcore and what became known as like New England metalcore or whatever, there was a time where it wasn't that physical, you know. And then all of a sudden, this generation of people showed up who were very physical. And in my mind, it's weird. Like I can see it sort of starting and then culminating in the fame of bands like Dillinger Escape Plan, who really took that and like ran with it.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder if people realize there's like a lineage of these like very physical swinging your guitar around type of bands that goes way back to like the 90s, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. True.
You know?
With Providence, in my time way back in the day, I saw. I mean, I don't know when Club Babyhead started. Do you know when that club actually became a club?
I don't. I've always assumed it was sometime in the 80s, but it closed like a little bit before my time.
Yeah, because I remember seeing shows there. I think I saw DRI Four of a Kind tour there.
Oh shit!
I saw Excel from California
Yeah,
played there.
yeah.
I saw Verbal Assault play there. I mean,
Sick. Yeah,
for a kid from, I was born in Massachusetts, but pretty much I lived in New Hampshire my whole life. But I had always gone down to Boston to see shows every weekend. And
yeah,
like I always talk about on this with everybody, everybody doesn't really understand that every single weekend it was a stacked lineup everywhere. So it was like either
yeah,
Worcester, Providence,
yeah,
Boston, Manchester, New Hampshire. But it was such a like every lineup was stacked, and it was every single weekend.
yeah. And that's where I show my age a little bit because like at this point it's pretty in vogue for shows to have sort of a minimal amount of groups or projects playing. You know, people get tired; they don't want to sit there all night and deal with X, Y, and Z things. But you know, when we were coming up, it was like split sets were a thing where
Yeah,
like one band would get on a show and they'd have 20 minutes and then they would share gear and each band would play for like 10 minutes. Or that whole thing where like you borrow each other's gear has always been annoying, but it was much more accepted in the beginning because it was more community oriented and came from things like hardcore and punk, which was much more about the community. So like people were more supportive in that regard, you know,
yeah,
and less concerned with breakage and stuff like that because it was also explicitly about the music. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Not to say that anyone is unlike this now, but certain things have fallen out of vogue in that regard.
yeah.
They might be impractical things. So I get that.
Now, what Providence bands back in the day, 2000, like what like really got you like into
Uh,
the Providence scene? Obviously, like, you know, Drop Dead and
yeah, we had all these heavy hitters, man. I mean, we still do have a whole bunch, but
Arab on
um,
Radar was always one of my favorites.
yeah,
And
Arab on Radar was there, Drop Dead was there, Lightning Bolt was there. Lightning Bolt was very interesting though because, and same with Arab on Radar, you could see Lightning Bolt and Arab on Radar for a long time in front of nobody. And Arab on, and I don't want to say like I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I mean like the audiences were small. This is a subculture, so you could go and catch these bands doing interesting things. And then Arab on Radar ended up breaking up before their audience really became evident. Whereas Lightning Bolt, they stuck around, and it was interesting to watch. One day you could go see Lightning Bolt play wherever,
yeah,
stand right there and get your head torn off, and then like a year later you weren't paying attention, and all of a sudden you can't even get into a Lightning Bolt show in your own hometown.
yeah,
I've always loved all three of those bands: Drop Dead, Airborne Radar, Lightning Bolt. There's been countless smaller bands throughout the years that have been incredible. I think initially for me, I was mostly interested. What kept me around was that this is where I found my friends. You know, this is where I found my community because I was always dorky, and I come in Central Falls is like there's nobody walking around wearing all black there, you know, playing guitar and stuff. I was
yeah,
an outlier for sure, and I didn't have a ton of friends. I had some, but that community came with things like going to see bands like Candaria or whatever. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I would slowly meet people over the years, and most of which I still know. So it was honestly really a lot about community, and then I loved the communal and social aspect of being in a band, and then also the tactile experience of playing instruments with people,
yeah,
which is how I ended up picking up drums and keyboards and whatever else, is just because that's what was fun. It wasn't really about learning how to play guitar. I'm trying to think of some bands that might be interesting that maybe you haven't heard of that were like amazing. We had this band called Necronometron that was incredible, which is like this bizarre, strange metal band with like high falsetto vocals, which were always pitchy and a little out of key, but somehow it made it like really fucking cool.
yeah,
That was a very bizarre band. And in short, for a long time, Providence has always championed weirdness. You know, not in the way that let's keep Austin weird or whatever those bumper
yeah,
stickers
yeah,
say,
yeah,
but like for some reason there was a moment in time for like 20 or 30 years or whatever, bands like Six Finger Satellite and the Hydrogen Terrors, Medicine Ball, all kinds of bands going from like the 80s and 90s suddenly blew up into this like community that was wholly about pushing boundaries and trying to get a little weird and artistic and so on and so forth. And
yeah,
that wave is sort of crested at this point, but we still have like all kinds of creative noise musicians and people who make instruments and lots of really solid rock bands and you name it. I mean, it's here.
yeah.
It's just a different thing. You know, like I can't think of even one legit hardcore band here when at one point it was like a strong,
It was like a yeah, it was like
regular hardcore community, you know?
yeah, yeah. The I think like I had only gone to the living room maybe 10 times, and like in that early 2000 era, I think Daughters like really it wasn't like made copycat bands of Daughters, but the short songs really spastic. You know, I think it spurred a bunch of bands to almost like not imitate you guys, but like almost pay homage to Daughters just because you guys were so awesome. Like when I first saw you guys, I was blown away. You know, I had
Thank
seen
you.
As a Sunsets a million times before that, but like Lex had a huge influence on me in my like little bands that I played in, just with his stage performance
Mm.
and just the way he was in general. And then the band itself with you and Pat, Jeremy and John, like I was, you know what I mean? It was just blew me away. And that's why I tried to go see you guys as much as I could back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I think it spurred a lot of bands to kind of like be in that, you know, forte of what you guys were doing at that time. Do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, no, I saw it. I wish I had the humility as a younger person to recognize the flattery in those things, you know, because when Daughters was younger, we were a hell of a lot more rambunctious. I mean, the whole band had like a rambunctious, like rebellious vibe. I mean, everything about the band. And a lot of it really was coming from Lex. I mean, his stage banter was antagonistic and so on and so forth. But you know, early on, it really bothered me when the band picked up speed, and there were all these bands that were like taking cues from Daughters. I found that to be frustrating because, like, to me, we had worked on and stumbled upon something that sounded like us.
Yeah.
And then I saw all these people that I didn't relate to coming from a different genres walking in and taking bits and pieces, and it used to aggravate me. And that's regretful because, like I say, it's a platitude, but it is a form of flattery. So I lack the humility necessary to recognize that as a younger person. But now I think it's amazing, you know. And I had an incident at one point in the mid 2000s where we played a show somewhere on tour, and this band was actually straight up playing my riffs, like in their songs and shit. And I remember watching them going, and afterwards some kid was talking to me, and I openly criticized this band for stealing my music directly. Years later, I found out that the band members were nearby, heard me say it, were like heartbroken because they didn't do it intentionally. They like really loved our band. They were so happy to be there. And their band broke up because of it. They decided to just break the band up. And that was a lesson learned. You know, I hope to never make anyone feel that way ever again. You know, that is a regret for sure. But it did happen. It totally happened. Even with Hell Songs, which, like, when that came out, it tanked our band. All this momentum we had built with Canada Songs just disappeared pretty much.
Yeah.
And at that point, we became like a band's band. Those were the people who were supporting us, other folks in bands.
Yeah.
This one band came out, and they sounded like a much more adept version of As the Sun Sets. Like As the Sun Sets, but really dialed in, really neat and tidy, except they had adopted Lex's transformation vocal-wise on Hell Songs. And they gave us a copy. That was the strangest thing ever, because I could listen to the band and go, this band is way fucking better than us on a technical level. But it's really weird to hear them doing a version of the old band with elements of the new band. Bizarre stuff. But that was actually a really good band. I can't remember what they're called. I think they became sort of popular for a little while. But yeah, it's been a thing. I don't know.
Now when Canada Songs, like, in between, like, it seemed like were fans losing interest because of the vocal, like the vocals were so much different? And then, you know, honestly, when I first heard it, I was taken back by the vocals because I wasn't expecting it. And then when I, like, took the time to sit down and listen to it, I was like, oh, this is amazing shit. But at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this. Like,
that was a tough record, man, because so we were putting together Canada Songs. I got kicked out of the band like a month or two before the recording session, which broke my heart. I was like depressed for like a year, you know. But then they went through an album cycle, had to go through a handful of members that weren't working out and were in need. And so they asked me to come back. We started writing Hell Songs, but like I really wasn't writing very much of anything. And so like anytime you go out of practice with just about anything, you lose it a little bit. So I basically, as an outsider at this point, assessed what had happened to the guys while I was out, because Canada Songs made them go much bigger. And I paid attention to things they were releasing and the way they sounded and all this other stuff. And it was my personal opinion that and basically also based on the people who were taking cues from Daughters, that we need to try something else.
Yeah.
And that was an intuition. And I'm not saying we had it during Hell Songs, but to me, that is sort of like a transitional record. It was like doing something that sounded like us, but was different, and gave us enough confidence to say that, like, we feel like it's possible for Daughters to transform and have it be fairly successful. And in terms of the vocals, I mean, I think the vocals totally drove a lot of people away, because at that point we only had a Canada Songs audience, really.
Yeah.
So this is like antithetical, which was entirely intentional. I mean, Lex's whole reason for doing it was like, I don't want to fucking scream anymore. I'm sick of it in general, but I'm sick of all these other people screaming. He's like, we're all going to scream.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And then I kind of forced the bands to do this like sterile production thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I felt like the music would be much more uncomfortable if it was produced sort of like cleanly, like I said, in a sterile way, sort of like a hospital vibe to it. And I thought that would make it more intense. And I have no idea if that worked or came across, but basically we did everything we could to shoot ourselves in the foot with that record.
Yeah.
Um, and if we didn't make the self-titled the way we did, we probably wouldn't have been able to come back from it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I honestly, I think you're right with Lex saying, I mean, you can only scream for so long, and where it's not redundant over and over again. I mean, who can honestly make 4 or 5 albums of just screaming and the same type of music
Yeah.
without evolving and so I like.
Yeah.
Believe me,
You need new tools and stuff. You got to try new things.
yeah,
It's not always going to work. That's kind of like with You Won't Get What You Want. We had no idea anyone was going to give a shit about that record. It was just like literally us in a vacuum, just kind of making things that we liked and trying new shit out. And it actually makes it terrifying to realize that now it's a career when it was never meant to be a career. It was just this thing we like doing. And I have no idea how we did it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I was there, I made it, but like it, the success factor is like, what is a mystery to me. You know,
yeah.
it seems very unlikely that we would be in this position. You
So
know,
so it surprised you on how well it was, taken in by
absolutely.
the audience. Yeah,
Yeah, and you know, when you see our shows now, depending on where you are, the breadth of audience members, like the dynamic ranges anywhere from people from young kids who are there with their parents who've never seen a concert before.
yeah,
Because now we're not doing shows now. Now we're a concert, so
yeah,
it's there's that.
yeah,
All the way up to people who are maybe in their 50s and late 50s who have taken an interest in daughters. I mean, I remember in France, I got a message from a woman in her 50s who was like, "You just made this old bat so happy," and I think that's the fucking coolest, you know.
yeah.
So we've struck something likable, and it's to me it's rather undefined, and I can't tell what that would be, you know.
Now, do you think you got more people interested because you guys did like the Adult Swim thing and the K-Pit thing that was, people could see that? Do you think that drew like a new?
Yeah, I think it helped. I think it helped our quest to make this a human experience evident to the audience. You know, meaning like I think some of those things personalized the members a little more, which I think created more ownership over us as people. Like it brings us closer to the folks who like our music. And I love that too. Not to be generic, like it's all about the fans, but I mean, like I really like that because I had a hard time touring last year, and one of the saving graces of the year was meeting people who are like so happy to be chatting and talking about music. And a lot of these folks, I keep conversations going on in Instagram because I would like to make myself available like that. And I think some of the
Yeah,
other members do that too.
yeah,
Those things helped. I mean, this is also the first time where we're really trying anything like that. I mean, we have management now, and we're trying to do the things. We're trying to do things the right way, as opposed to we have literally made every possible mistake you can make for a
yeah,
band who wants to have a career, because we never ever wanted a career. We never ever said, let's go try to make some money, let's try to get an audience. We literally for a long time foolishly were just out there. It's not foolish, but we were getting older and allowing ourselves to take hit after hit after
yeah,
hit
yeah,
to be out there playing unlikable music,
yeah,
when we could have done a whole bunch of things to make our lives easier. And so, yeah, K-Pit was fascinating because I didn't know it was going to be a big deal at all. And then with Chris Novoselic of Nirvana tweeting about us from the Nirvana Twitter, and then sending like text down the industry pipeline so that we would see his like personal comments and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
That was epic to me, and unfortunately only undermined by his recent support of Donald Trump. I
Yes,
was like, oh, okay, so the least cool member of Nirvana thinks my band, he called us punks.
yeah,
I was like, oh, that sucks. He has no idea what he's talking about.
yeah. Oh, oh man.
Yeah.
I meant to mention too. There was a video I did where I videotaped There Were Wires and Kite Flying Society in
Oh, hell yeah.
And if I'm not wrong about that, you set up that show. Is that right? Because in the video they say thank Nick for setting up this show, and
You know what? I set up a handful of shows back then, like things that were sort of like passed down to me somehow, like things people didn't want to deal with, and they were just like, "You do it."
yeah,
And I was a little kid, but back then we had a room in Providence. Providence used to have a whole lot of empty mill buildings. It's
yeah,
becoming increasingly scarce. But back then we had this massive room. It was so big that we had like a band in every single corner, and there was so much space in there. Every band had like 8 side projects. And at one point we just started having shows in there. And so I think who did what is starting to get a little muddled.
yeah,
Like there's a pretty well-known Converge show that happened in that space. They had a show booked somewhere, the venue fell through, and somehow they moved last minute the entire show to our practice space. And so there ended up being like, I don't even know, 500 kids or something in this tiny space, which is on one of their DVDs. And if you pay attention, you can see me in like behind the drummer standing there. And I don't know who you would remember, like friendly faces in the crowd, but you can see all kinds of like Providence and Massachusetts, like scene folks hanging out and having a good time. I don't know if I booked that, but we do have a relationship, or we did, with Kite Flying Society. We stayed with them for like a week on our first tour when we were in Florida. And then of course I have this custom guitar that I designed years ago that says Nick the Stripper. It's a 9-string and it's gold glitter tiger print. That was what was made by Jeb from There Were Wires.
Oh, really? Amazing. That's amazing.
He was in Doom Riders for a long time, and we toured with them a bunch. Later on, I toured with him in Fang Island, and he was working for a Boston guitar company, and they were just giving guitars to people like me for some reason, and all kinds of folks. So I have one. Brent Hines from Mastodon has one. Dude from High on Fire, whose name I should know and can't remember suddenly. But yeah, that was Jeb from There Were Wires.
Oh, that's sick.
It was really cool. It was like one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me.
When you were young, did you go up to Boston for shows also, or did you kind of just mainly stick in like the Providence area?
I did, but it would be a tag along thing, like if there was like an open seat in a car, or a lot of times I would literally get in the As the Sun Sets vehicles and just tag along. I mean, I was like literally a child, and as someone who's approaching 40, I still look pretty young. You can imagine when I was like 16, 17, I looked like real little. So I think they probably thought of me that way, and would just, if I would ask them to do things, they would be like, yeah, and they would stuff me in with the gear, and we would drive out to like Cape Cod or something.
Yeah.
And one time I drove with them, and they played a show. It was with God Forbid, As the Sun Sets, and like a whole bunch of bands that went on to be like huge metal bands in the 2000s. I remember this. Unearth maybe was one of them.
Yeah, Unearth, yeah.
Yeah. Kill Switch Engage, like that type of shit.
Now, was Unearthed Lunacy before they were Unearthed, or was it Lunacy?
I'm trying to remember. I know there was wasn't there also a buddy band? It was like Unearthed, and then there was another band, and they were like kind of like this team.
Well, I always saw like Purity's Failure and Unearthed way back in the day. Purity's Failure, but I'm not quite. But
I can't remember.
One of those bands' names was Lunacy before, and I'm not sure if it was Unearthed or because I remember I saw them play in Portsmouth, New Hampshire with Zao and Dead Eyes Under, and they were at the time, and then it what
was cool about Dead Eyes Under? They had this really atypical bass player. Do you remember that guy?
I do remember that guy.
He had really long hair. He was enmeshed in the hardcore community in his town, and he was a massive Bjork fan. Like,
really?
World's #1 Bjork fan. He would come out to these shows wearing absolutely gigantic Bjork t-shirts. Like, they would be like down to his knees and shit. And
really?
He was the nicest guy ever. I remember the last time I ever saw him was at a Lightning Bolt show. He just wanted to check out what that was all about, and he showed up that night wearing a Bjork shirt.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't remember him wearing a Bjork shirt. I think I've seen Dead Eyes Under maybe a handful of times. They were Fleshhold before they were Dead Eyes.
Wow.
Under. I think that's what their name was before. I'm not sure if that guy was still in it. I just remember the guitar player always wore a like a Jason mask that had studs coming out.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Like a lot of those bands, I would sort of like find out about through like, cause back, we didn't have the internet like that back then. So you'd have to go to the shows. You'd have to literally look at people's back patches and shit and read liner
Yeah.
notes. And you'd have to sort of like weasel your way into finding out about this stuff. And a lot of that for me was literally word of mouth in person.
Yeah. Yeah.
If As the Sun Sets played a show with a bunch of bands, I would find out about it. And then all of a sudden I knew about more hardcore or metal bands or whatever they were doing,
Yeah, yeah. I would set up shows in Haverhill, and I would. This was before the internet, so I'd have to like email or AOL John to see if they could play. You know what I mean? And then it would be weeks before I would hear anything, and then if it worked out, it worked out. But that's what I had to do when I was setting up shows way back then. Was writing letters. I was writing like hand letters to people, being like, "Hey, do you want to play the show? I know you live in Maryland, but do you want to come up to New Hampshire or Haverhill, Massachusetts to play a show?"
That stuff is awesome. I love thinking about that. That's this is why I don't blame anyone who covets old like death metal and black metal stories and shit, because that's like how those communities sort of began, tape trading and all this other stuff, like very obscure. Yeah. You don't have that anymore. And I remember the first time I was in a band that sort of gathered an audience, suddenly demo tapes were just being mailed to my mom's house in Central Falls. I didn't have any idea how they even found the address.
Yeah.
And it would be so we could try to play shows together and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was really cool to me. That really doesn't happen now. Obviously everything's, if it's not on Bandcamp or SoundCloud, people will send you Dropbox or Google Drive links and things.
Yeah, exactly. It was a struggle back then for sure. Like,
yeah.
But like I said before, somehow there was a show every Saturday and Sunday. For as long as I can remember. I'll be 50 in a year and a half, and I've been going to shows since I was 12 years old. I had a similar upbringing like you. I had a very liberal mom. And I hung out with like older kids, and the first show I went to was Gallery East in Boston. I saw SSD and DYS, and
wow.
I was scared shitless, and I stopped going. I went to that show, and I stopped going to shows probably until I was 15, and then I started going to the Channel in Boston, and that was hardcore matinees every Saturday and Sunday, and that's when kind of Babyhead got into it, and we were like it was like Boston, Providence, Worcester. Then Worcester started like coming into its own at that time too.
Those days were absolutely fucking hilarious. Obviously you're talking about a time earlier than mine, but I remember, like I said, I would literally go to any show. I saw like all kinds of rap rock bands, you name it, everybody in town, anyone who played, anyone who came through. If I could afford it and I could get there, I would go. And I ended up seeing all kinds of like 90s like beat down hardcore bands, and I had the same, like I saw SSD, but I wouldn't categorize them in that zone. But no, I didn't see SSD. I saw DRI at Lupo's. That's what it was.
Oh, DRI.
Yeah. But no, I ended up seeing bands like, I saw Blood for Blood like a lot of times. They always seem to be on these like shows, and I had an experience that reminds me of your SSD experiences. Like I saw it, and the singer was talking about how like we were all pussies, and back in his day we would have all gotten our asses kicked in the crowd. And then the guitar player was talking about a gun he had on him or something, while he's on the stage, and I was like, I'm not into this shit. Like, and that was like the beginning of me not being able to take hardcore music seriously. But like any genre, there's always going to be like profound contributions from people and bands and stuff. And so I went through a really long phase of just not giving a shit about hardcore, and then I let it back in because it does have value. And although it's not represented in the music that I make, I still like it. And especially now that I'm so far away from it. Like, we jokingly listen to Hatebreed in the van sometimes, or when we're hanging out, because it's just funny music to me at this point.
Yeah.
But we also, you can tell, we really appreciate how blatantly just heavy it is. They're just like, we want to do the simplest, heaviest thing. And I don't know. And I have to appreciate that they succeeded in doing so. in the same way that I love the band Mortician. I've always loved this band Mortician since like the 90s, way before they got cool on the internet. They were like considered the worst metal band. But to me, they were like the simplest undiluted form of death metal,
Yeah,
except for solos, just the dumbest, heaviest, darkest
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
And I was like, this is amazing for that reason, you know?
yeah.
And so, you know, I appreciate certain elements of hardcore for those reasons as well.
Now, are you working on new music for the like a new Daughters album right now?
I'm trying. It's not coming easy this time around. Uh, it's coming a little less naturally, partially because I'm on a creative. I'm like diverging paths creatively on a personal level, sort of
Yeah,
naturally. You know,
yeah,
like my own creative journey is always sort of pulling me away from Daughters, and that has nothing to do with Daughters. It's just natural. It's part of why the band always moves a little bit. You know,
yeah,
because one of the things that's happening this year is I lost my train of thought that I had with "You Won't Get What You Want."
yeah,
So nothing really sounds like that record at this point, which is both liberating and a little terrifying because you know we've all completely changed our lives to do Daughters full time. So
yeah,
now we will always lead with creativity, but we have to consider things like some of us have kids, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So you know, there's a lot of stuff to consider. I'm working on it though. I have a whole pile of stuff. It just depends on whether or not it resonates with the other guys, whether or not it can actually come together and make sense as a record. Um, you know, at the end of the day, no one in our band is going to release anything we don't feel good about.
yeah,
Not, you know, I mean, we'll go back to taking the rip to public bus everywhere we go and working shit jobs in order to avoid releasing a record we think sucks, you
yeah,
know? And there's a timeline on that. You know, it's finite. If we don't come up with something in time rather than spending 6 years on it, that's exactly what will happen to us, you
yeah.
know? Maybe not Lex. He's got a solo record now, so that might work for him.
Now, is it tougher because now you guys live all over the United States, and when you guys first started, you guys kind of all lived in the Providence area for the most part, right?
Yep. John and Lex lived together on and off, so that was easy. Various members were living together. Like we had a guitar player. His name is Brent Fertini. He's on Hell Songs. He lives with Sam, our bass player. We have touring bass players now, but Sam's like in the band. Sam's I don't know what you would call it. He's the bass player.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it was a lot easier. It was a lot easier, even if the whole band wasn't participating, or if writing responsibilities ended up becoming one person's responsibility more than the collective group. It was easier to just be in the same city because then you could go to a room and you'd go through ideas faster.
yeah,
In person, you would know pretty quickly whether or not something was working, and then you could move on, make adjustments, whatever.
yeah,
Now, beginning with "You Won't Get What You Want," it's sort of fallen into my lap, and you know, I'm programming a lot of drum beats and things. So if I spend 8 hours working on a song, sometimes it just won't be any good, and then
yeah,
that's just gone. Other times
yeah,
I'll be psyched on it and I'll send it to the guys, and they just won't like it. And so it's a hurdle when everyone's in another space like
yeah,
that. And so we share a Dropbox where everyone can listen to things, and we try to talk on the phone. John comes up, you know, a handful of times a year to try to put some time in together in person, which is fruitful.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a lot harder. You know, when I was a kid, I used to fantasize about doing like these like Naked City, John Zorn, mail projects you do with people across the country where you just trade
yeah,
demos.
yeah,
That stuff is really for the pros, you know, because for me, it's harder,
mm,
you know, to make music you feel good about in that regard. Or maybe it's just Daughters. I don't really know.
yeah. Now, how's your physical state now? I mean, I saw the pictures when you first went on tour, last tour, where you first day your hand is ripped to shreds. And I know Lyme disease and
Yes.
the problems with your ears and stuff.
Yeah.
How have you felt physically like lately?
Oh, God, man. I don't know, dude. I've had a year for the books. Obviously, everyone has. My personal life has been not super great since we got home. And so, weirdly, one of the things I'm trying to do to stay on track is to focus on physical health as a way to maintain my mental health. This is very common if you don't know.
Yep.
And at one point, I was going to it for the first time in my life. I was going to a gym like every other day. I had no idea that that's kind of a lot. People do that, but like I was in a constant state of injury for like 2 months, you know? I
Yeah.
was always like really tired and sore.
Yeah.
and I was actually kind of bulking up, and Way Out played a show where I didn't wear sleeves, and I saw a photo from it, and I was like, I'm not someone who feels comfortable flexing in that type of,
Yeah.
so I was like, it's either going to be a whole lot of sleeves or I'm not going to the gym anymore.
Yeah.
But I also have walked many, many miles this year. So my body feels pretty good. My hands always get hurt in daughters because it's not natural to play guitar that way.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to show up with as much energy and as much of a show for the people who come to watch our band play. I feel like it's a responsibility. You're taking their money, and they're not asking Lex or I to do any of the things that we choose to do up there. But that is kind of what naturally happens when Lex and I each enter our flow states. And sometimes I just get hurt. As we went along throughout the year, I must have gotten better at it though, because I became less and less hurt.
Yeah, like I said, the first couple of like pictures and videos, your hands were like shredded. I was like, it's gotta be rough this first couple of days already. Like,
it was funny. Like for years, we were just doing like a couple weeks a year to remind people that we existed. And in Canada, one day we were playing, and one of my fingernails ripped off somehow. I wasn't even really doing anything. I was just standing around playing guitar, but I was so out of practice and so out of shape. The fingernail just kind of came off like at the halfway point. And some kid wrote a review of the show in like a local newspaper or something. And he was talking about how I sold my soul to the devil to be able to play guitar the way I do, and that my fingernails were flying off. It's like one of my favorite reviews. Meanwhile, we have Gary. He's our live guitar player for the last like 12 or 13 years. He's on the opposite side of the stage. This is a pro level player. This guy is he's incredibly talented and dedicated, way more dedicated to guitar and even just music in general than I'm probably ever going to be. His fingernails are like fine.
really?
Yeah. So,
yeah. Oh, Jesus. All right. Well, we got about 10 minutes. These things go so quick. It's, every time I talk to somebody, it's like it goes real quick. I'm just gonna shoot some quick questions at you. What was the first punk like hardcore show you ever attended?
Oh my God, what is the first one
That you could really say, like, I guess hardcore or screamo, whatever. I can't stand labels, but
I don't know, man. I mean, I saw some really basic punk bands, probably bands no one would ever know. Like Rhode Island used to, for a weird period of time, Rhode Island had a skinhead scene. But there was one band, and they were skinheads, not in like the edgy, perhaps racist sense, like in the fashion sense, the lifestyle sense. And that band was called Nowhere Fast. Did you ever catch that band?
No, I don't think so. Although maybe I have. I mean,
it's possible. Some of those guys and I later did a band called What Feeds the Fire. When that was done, they did a band called Verse, which became much more well known in the hardcore community.
Yeah,
I think it might have been Nowhere Fast. It's
Nowhere
possible.
Fast.
Yeah, it could be.
All right. What was the all-time favorite daughter show back in the day that you ever played? Like, maybe when Pat was in the band, or like when you first started out. What was like the best show you think?
I can't think of one specifically. I should probably think about this more, right? This is my life.
Yes.
But I used to really enjoy the early daughter shows because we'd be on the floor, the audience would be right there with us, we'd be smushed up against the amps. And that was back when audience members were not really moshing, they were spazzing out.
Oh, yeah.
And people would come to shows wearing costumes, or people in the audience would just be naked. We would be naked, and it would just be like this chaotic thing. You'd play a song that was 60 seconds long. Everyone would be like, pushing each other over, pushing the gear down, and then the song would end, and then you'd play another one. And there were innumerable shows like that, and those were like the most valuable shows to me as a young person.
That's cool. Yes, I remember those shows well.
Yeah.
Well.
Those were incredible. They were so fun.
Would you guys ever play a basement show again?
Right before we broke up, that was my idea. I was trying to save our band. There was no enthusiasm. Right before we broke up, you could tell the band members were losing enthusiasm. We were broke. We were disliking each other. And I had this very dumb idea to be like, why don't we do like a weird secret basement tour? And the other guys were like, I already hate doing this. Like, why would I want to stuff myself into a fucking basement for like no money? I don't know. I don't know because it all depends on how the other guys feel. I would do it. I would do like a cool secret like basement show. I think that would be super fucking fun, and I would love to play the older material for something like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Now I heard Lex, like you guys don't really play anything from Canada songs, but then I saw a video online from 2016 where Fur Beach was played. So is that, do you guys
Uh,
like,
Maybe I don't know which video you saw. Last I can remember playing those tunes was 2013 at our reunion shows, and when we did these reunion shows, we wanted to play bits of the first three records that we had.
yeah,
And that's how we learned that we should. I mean, we already knew. We had stopped playing Canada songs a long time ago. We already knew that we were done. But that's really the last time. It became very evident that sonically, those songs didn't stand a chance against the latter material. They
yeah,
just sounded dumb back to back. And the other thing was we weren't approaching those songs from the same perspective and mindset, the same worldview and verve. So like they weren't being performed as well as they could have been. We had
yeah,
focused so much on developing like groove and things like this that we lost all that like mindless spastic energy that we used to have,
yeah,
which was valuable and we loved. But like not only can't we do it, like even Hell songs, we stopped playing Hell songs because playing a couple of songs from Hell songs in a You Won't Get What You Want set, the Hell songs material sounds very dumb now. You
yeah,
know, it's like it's not the case with every band, but as we progress, we keep overshadowing previous records, and then the
yeah,
set gets kind of fucked up.
yeah, yeah. My next question is, what was the last movie you watched?
I last full movie, Possessor.
Possessor. How
Yeah,
was that? I haven't seen that.
it's fucking amazing. It's not out yet. Did you see that movie Antiviral?
I have, yes.
Yeah, it's the same director, Cronenberg, Jason Cronenberg, I think.
Yep, yep.
And I got it from somewhere. I don't know. It just showed up, and I think it'll be in the theaters or maybe for streaming sometime in the fall. But
Yeah,
it's like an arty horror film, and the score is completely bananas.
yeah,
The music in the movie is like unprecedented in a film, and it's sort of like the next phase of these really incredible modern film composers
yeah,
that you've been hearing in movies like Under the Skin and Hereditary
yeah,
and
yeah.
whatever else. You know, these people who are pushing the boundaries in that regard. That score is fucking incredible.
Yeah, I gotta see it. I gotta
It
see
made
it.
me sweat because I'm like, oh, I want to be a film score guy. And then I heard that, and I'm like, I don't even know how you make that. I have no clue. Which then I was like, well, I guess I just won't do it then.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah,
I heard it, but now that you say it, I saw the trailer, but like you said, I can't find it anywhere. But
yeah,
I'm gonna be searching.
yeah, yeah. It's out there. Maybe in Davy Jones' locker, if you know what I
Yes.
mean.
Then my last question is, if you've been listening to hip hop, what have you been listening to?
I do love hip hop. I haven't been listening to a lot of it this year because I actually am about to score a handful of movies. So I try to put things in my mind that are relevant to the things that I'm trying to put out.
Yep.
But I loved that Run the Jewels record that came out this year.
Yeah. So good.
Super cool. And then, of course, I was absolutely taken by the Zach De La Roca guest on one of those songs. I love Rage Against the Machine. I love
Yeah.
that guy's voice. Way back to when we were kids and we realized that the guy from Rage Against the Machine was in
Inside Out.
Inside Out, you know.
Yeah.
His voice has always stuck out to me. So to hear him have maybe 16 bars or whatever in that track was sick.
Yeah. I know you. You're a Danny Brown fan too, aren't you?
I love Danny Brown. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, how could I not? It's like he's like like anybody who does anything like what he does, he's going to appeal to somebody who goes after artier, weirder, outside of the box, pushing the boundary shit. And so Triple X, when I first heard that, I was like, this is really, really weird. This is the weirdest hip hop record. And then I went back and I listened to Hybrid, and I was like, oh, this guy has all his chops in place, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just made a conscious decision to like spread out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is like, to me, deeply admirable. You know, anybody who at least tries has my vote, you know?
Yep, I hear that definitely. I'm a huge Danny Brown fan. We got about 30 seconds.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you so much, Nick. I mean,
Thanks, man.
like, I definitely, like, I'm so happy that we did this.
You too, man. Thank you.
I'm trying to do this every week and keep it going. And I really, really do appreciate it. I love Darters so much. I loved it
Thanks,
back
bud.
then. I love it just as much now than I ever have.
Thank you.
And I just want you to be safe and
Same.
have a great Labor Day. And once again, I thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, Hal. I really appreciate the invite, man. This was fun.
All right, Nick. Thanks. I'll
All right.
talk to you soon. All
See you,
right,
bud.
man. Bye.